As you watch this video, kindly like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that whenever I post a new video, you will be the first to be notified. In the bustling heart of Lagos, surrounded by the noise of honking cars and the chatter of busy streets, Grace lived a life that, though modest, was full of hope. Her world revolved around her husband, Daniel, and their 3 children, Sarah, Ruth, and Michael. They lived in a cramped two-room apartment in a crowded neighborhood where the air smelled of burning kerosene and fried street food. The walls were cracked, the windows rattled in the wind, and the roof leaked whenever it rained. But to Grace, their home was a sanctuary. Every morning, Daniel would rise before dawn, his toolbox in hand, and head to the auto repair workshop where he worked as a mechanic. He was a man of boundless optimism, always smiling, always dreaming. His hands were rough, his nails perpetually stained with grease, but his heart was full of love. Daniel believed that hard work and determination could overcome any obstacle. One day, he would often say, "We'll move out of this place. Our children will go to school, and we'll live in a house with a garden. We'll have space to breathe, Grace. You'll see." Grace, ever supportive, would smile and hold his hand. "I believe you," she'd reply. "With you by my side, we can achieve anything." Their love was a partnership built on trust, sacrifice, and shared dreams. While Daniel worked long hours, Grace managed their home and earned a little extra income selling akara, bean cakes by the roadside. She also devoted herself to her children. Sarah, the eldest at 8 years old, was bright and curious, always asking questions. Ruth, 6, was more reserved, but her sharp mind and keen observations often surprised Grace. Michael, the baby of the family at 5, was a bundle of energy, always running around and pretending to fix toy cars like his father. Every evening, the family would gather in their small living room. They'd share a simple meal of rice and beans, often laughing and telling stories. It was in these moments that Grace felt the fullness of her life, the joy of having a family that loved each other deeply. She would sit back and watch Daniel play with the children, her heart swelling with gratitude. But life, as Grace would soon learn, has a way of testing even the strongest bonds and the most steadfast hearts. It was an ordinary morning, the kind that begins with quiet optimism. The sun rose over the city, casting golden light on the crowded streets. Grace prepared breakfast while Daniel got ready for work. He kissed her on the forehead as he grabbed his toolbox. "I'll be home early today," he said. "There's an old car that needs fixing. If I finish it, we'll have a little extra to save." Grace handed him his lunch, a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Be safe," she said, as she always did. That afternoon, as Grace fried akara by the roadside, she felt an unusual unease. She brushed it off, convincing herself it was nothing. But as the hours passed and Daniel didn't return, her anxiety grew. When evening came, there was a knock on the door. Grace wiped her hands on her apron and opened it, expecting to see her husband's familiar smile. Instead, she was met by Daniel's colleague. His face was pale, his eyes downcast. "Grace," he began, his voice trembling. "There was an accident at the workshop. Daniel, he's gone." The words didn't register at first. Grace stared at him, her heart pounding. "No," she said, shaking her head. "That's not possible. He was fine this morning. He said he'd be home early." The man lowered his gaze, unable to meet her eyes. "I'm so sorry." Grace's knees gave way, and she collapsed to the floor, her mind spinning. The sound of her children playing in the next room seemed distant, as if coming from another world. She felt a sharp, unbearable pain in her chest, as if her heart were breaking apart. She rushed to the hospital, clinging to the hope that there had been a mistake. But when she saw Daniel's lifeless body, cold and still on a gurney, the truth struck her like a thunderbolt. She let out a wail that echoed through the sterile hallways. Her children were brought to the hospital by a kind neighbor. They stood by, confused and frightened. Sarah, clutching Grace's dress, whispered, "Mama, what's happening? Where's Daddy?" Ruth, her small face pale, stared at her father's body in silence. Michael, too young to understand, tugged at Grace's arm. "Mama, when is Daddy coming home? Why is he sleeping here?" Grace pulled her children close, her tears soaking their hair. "Your daddy isn't coming home," she choked out. "But I promise you, I'll take care of you. No matter what, I'll keep us together." Her words were a vow, spoken through the depths of her grief. Life without Daniel was a harsh and unrelenting struggle. The weight of responsibility fell squarely on Grace's shoulders, and the city of Lagos, with its chaos and relentless pace, showed no mercy. Grace's first challenge was money. Daniel had left behind no savings, and the bills began piling up. Rent, school fees, and the cost of food seemed insurmountable. Grace quickly realized she had to find work, and fast. She started waking up before dawn to clean offices downtown. The pay was meager, but it was something. During the day, she returned to her roadside stall, frying akara under the unforgiving sun. The heat was brutal, and the fumes from the frying oil made her eyes water, but she endured it. In the evenings, she took on laundry work for wealthier families, scrubbing clothes until her hands were raw and blistered. Her body ached constantly. Her feet, once smooth, became rough and calloused from hours of standing. Her hands, once soft, were now dry and cracked. But she didn't complain. She couldn't. Her children needed her, and she was determined to provide for them. Sarah, Ruth, and Michael quickly understood the gravity of their situation. Though they were young, they began helping in whatever ways they could. Sarah woke up early to help her mother prepare snacks for the day. Ruth learned how to braid hair and started earning small amounts by styling the neighbor's hair. Michael, despite his age, ran errands and fetched water. At night, after the children were asleep, Grace would sit by the window of their small apartment, staring at the city lights. Tears would silently stream down her face as she prayed, "God, please give me the strength to raise them. Don't let my children suffer because of me. Help me see them through." Her grief for Daniel never fully subsided. There were nights when she would wake up, reaching out for him in the darkness, only to be met by the emptiness of her bed. But every morning, she rose with renewed determination, driven by her love for her children. As the years passed, Grace's children began to thrive academically. Sarah and Ruth excelled in school, their bright minds fueled by their mother's unwavering encouragement. Michael, though still young, showed an entrepreneurial spirit, often finding creative ways to earn small amounts of money. When Sarah graduated from secondary school, Grace faced an impossible choice. There was no money for university fees, and the thought of denying her daughter an education broke her heart. She spent sleepless nights agonizing over what to do. Finally, she made the hardest decision of her life. She sold Daniel's beloved toolbox, the last physical connection she had to him. As she handed Sarah the money, tears filled her eyes. "This was your father's," she said, her voice trembling. "He would want you to have a better life. Make him proud, my daughter." Sarah hugged her mother tightly, promising to work hard and make her sacrifices worthwhile. 2 years later, Ruth followed in her sister's footsteps. Michael, seeing the financial strain on his mother, made a selfless decision. "Mama," he said one evening, his voice steady despite his young age, "I'll learn a trade. I'll become a carpenter and start earning money to help you." Grace pulled him close, her tears soaking his shirt. "You're so much like your father," she whispered. "He would be so proud of you." Grace's sacrifices began to bear fruit as the years went by. Sarah excelled in university and graduated as a teacher. Her first job was at a private school in Lagos, where her dedication to shaping young minds earned her respect from her colleagues and admiration from her students. Ruth, driven by her quiet determination, graduated as well, securing a position at a multinational bank. Her keen intellect and unyielding work ethic propelled her career forward, and she quickly began to earn a salary that changed their family's fortunes. Michael, true to his promise, worked diligently during his 7-year carpentry apprenticeship. The skills he gained, coupled with his natural creativity, made him a sought-after craftsman. By the time he was in his mid-20s, Michael opened his own carpentry shop, and his business flourished. As their incomes grew, the siblings turned their focus to their mother. They were determined to give Grace the life she had sacrificed so much for. "First, we need to get her out of that tiny apartment," Sarah declared one evening as the three of them sat in Michael's shop. "I've already started looking at flats," Ruth said. "Something in a quieter neighborhood, away from all the noise and chaos. And we'll furnish it," Michael added, a smile breaking through his usual stoic expression. "Only the best furniture for Mama." A month later, they moved Grace into a spacious, modern flat in a peaceful part of the city. When they brought her to the new home, Grace was overwhelmed. She walked slowly through the rooms, her hands trembling as she touched the smooth, freshly painted walls. This is my home," she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Mama," Sarah said, tears in her eyes. "It's yours. No more cramped spaces, no more leaking roof. You deserve this." Grace sat on the plush sofa they had bought for her hands covering her face as she wept. "My children," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "you've made me the happiest mother in the world." For the first time in years, Grace felt a sense of peace. Her children ensured she never had to work again, filling her days with comfort and care. But beneath the joy, Grace's body was beginning to fail her. Grace's health began to decline in ways that were subtle at first. She grew tired more easily, and her once steady hands began to tremble. As the months passed, the signs became harder to ignore. Her children noticed that she was losing weight, her movements slower and more labored. "Mama, you're not eating enough," Ruth would say, trying to coax her into finishing her meals. "I'm fine, my dear," Grace would reply with a weak smile. "Don't worry about me." But Sarah, Ruth, and Michael were deeply worried. They took her to the best doctors in Lagos, sparing no expense to find out what was wrong. The diagnoses varied: fatigue, malnutrition, the long-term effects of overwork, but no treatment seemed to help. One evening, Grace's condition took a turn for the worse. She lay in her bed, her breathing shallow and her face pale. The siblings rushed to her side, their hearts gripped with fear. "Mama," Sarah whispered, holding her mother's frail hand, "we're here. We're not leaving you." Ruth knelt by the bed, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't go, Mama. We've just started giving you the life you deserved. You haven't had enough time to enjoy it." Michael, the strongest among them, struggled to contain his emotions. He sat at the foot of the bed, his head bowed as silent tears fell onto his hands. "Mama," he said hoarsely, "I should have done more. I should have worked harder, so you wouldn't have had to suffer like you did." Grace opened her eyes slowly, her gaze soft as she looked at her children. "Oh, my darlings," she said, her voice faint but filled with love. "You've already done more than I could have ever hoped for. You've made me so proud." Her eyes lingered on Sarah. "Sarah, my firstborn, you've always been strong. Take care of your siblings. Be the leader you were born to be." She turned to Ruth. "Ruth, my wise one, your strength is quiet but unshakable. Use it to guide your family and others who need you." Finally, she looked at Michael, her youngest. "Michael, my son," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "You carry your father's spirit. Never doubt your worth. You've given me so much joy." She paused, struggling to gather the strength for her next words. "Promise me," she said, her voice faltering, "that you'll take care of one another. And promise me that you'll use your blessings to help others. There are so many who suffer as we once did. Don't let my sacrifices end with me. Let them live on in the lives you touch." The siblings, their faces streaked with tears, nodded solemnly. "We promise, Mama," they said in unison. A faint smile appeared on Grace's lips. "You are my greatest joy," she whispered. "Thank you for being my children." Her eyes closed, and her breathing slowed until it stopped altogether. The room fell silent, save for the sound of her children's sobs. Grace was gone. The days following Grace's death were a blur of grief and memories. The siblings clung to one another, their shared pain a testament to the bond their mother had nurtured. But even in their sorrow, They remembered her final words. To honor her legacy, they began visiting orphanages in Lagos, bringing food, clothing, and school supplies. Each visit was a reminder of the struggles their family had endured and the kindness that had carried them through. Years later, they established the Grace Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing education and support to underprivileged children. The foundation became a beacon of hope, touching countless lives and ensuring that Grace's sacrifices would never be forgotten. One sunny afternoon, the siblings gathered at the foundation's headquarters. Michael was carving wooden toys for the children, his hands steady and practiced. Sarah and Ruth sat among the kids, teaching them songs their mother used to sing. As the children's laughter filled the air, the siblings felt a warmth they hadn't felt in years. It was as if Grace were there with them, her love woven into every smile and every joyful moment. Though they had lost her, Grace's legacy lived on, in the lives of her children, in the foundation, and in the countless people they helped. Her love, her sacrifices, and her strength had become an unbreakable light, shining brightly even in her absence. And in that light, they found healing, purpose, and peace. Grace's story had not ended. It had only just begun. That brings us to the end of this video. If you enjoyed this story, kindly leave a like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.